welcome back to our channel. A penny saved is a penny earned, but 1 cent can do even more. The year is 1961, and in the world of American numismatics, something extraordinary was happening. The 1-cent penny, a seemingly humble coin, was about to become the center of a fascinating journey that would eventually captivate the world. While the penny is a part of daily life for most Americans, the 1961 version of the 1-cent piece would go on to become a key chapter in the story of U.S. coinage and, ultimately, one of the most sought-after collector's items in history. Before diving into the story of the 1961 penny itself, let's set the stage. It was a time of transition, a period brimming with both optimism and change. The United States was in the midst of the post-World War II boom, the beginning of the space race, and a rapidly shifting political and social landscape. 1961 saw the inauguration of John F. Kennedy as the 35th President of the United States. The country was evolving, and so too was the design of its currency. The design of the 1961 penny would not look drastically different from the coins that preceded it. But it was part of a much larger, ongoing conversation about the nation's monetary system. At this time, the 1-cent piece, still featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, was a coin that millions of Americans were familiar with. Since its introduction in 1909, the penny had featured Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. The design had become iconic, and its association with Lincoln was deeply embedded in American culture. However, for a brief period in the 1950s and 1960s, the U.S. Mint produced some subtle variations in the design and quality of coins. The early 1960s saw coins struck with slightly different characteristics, mineral content and minting techniques that would end up playing a key role in the numismatic world years later. But what makes the 1961 penny particularly fascinating is not just the context of its creation, but the fact that certain examples of it are now among the rarest and most valuable coins ever minted. What began as a routine piece of currency, destined to circulate in the pockets and wallets of millions of Americans, would eventually become a hidden treasure for collectors around the world. In fact, it's important to remember that, at the time, the penny was just that, a penny. People didn't think much of it beyond its purchasing power. A penny could buy you a piece of candy, or perhaps, with a few others, a newspaper or a soda. It was small, it was often forgotten, and it was easily tossed aside. But for a certain few who paid attention to the minutiae of coinage, the 1961 penny was holding onto something valuable, something that would not reveal itself until many decades later. The minting of the 1961 penny occurred under the watchful eyes of the U.S. Mint, which, as always, was responsible for producing coins with precision. It's worth noting that the composition of the 1961 penny was primarily copper, with a small percentage of tin and zinc. This made the penny shiny, durable, and familiar to the touch. The coins were struck at various mints across the country, including the Philadelphia Mint, where the majority of them were produced, as well as Denver and San Francisco. However, the penny's significance as a collectible item didn't come from its design or its typical minting process. No, the true intrigue surrounding the 1961 penny lies in the unique characteristics of some of the coins that were produced in that year, specifically, a small number of pennies with certain rare characteristics that would set them apart from the rest. You see, within the mints, there were instances of errors during the production process. These errors often go unnoticed by the general public, but for numismatists and collectors, they represent an opportunity to uncover something extraordinarily rare. The errors can vary, from double strikes to misaligned dies, off-center impressions, or even coins that were struck with an unusually high level of detail. These variations make certain 1961 pennies especially sought after. The rarity of these particular coins would take years to surface, as they often slipped unnoticed into circulation, only to later be spotted by eagle-eyed collectors. It wasn't until the 1980s and 1990s that numismatists began to realize just how special certain 1961 pennies were. These coins had quietly accumulated value over the decades, unnoticed by most but prized by those who knew what to look for. In the world of numismatics, such discoveries are gold mines, sometimes literally. Now, let's explore the design of the 1961 penny a little deeper. On the obverse, we see the image of President Abraham Lincoln, one of the most revered figures in American history. The bust of Lincoln, facing right, is accompanied by the words, "In God We Trust," along with the inscription, "Liberty," and the year, 1961. Below Lincoln's image, the mint mark indicates where the coin was struck, a small detail that, in certain cases, can also provide clues to the coin's rarity. On the reverse side of the penny, we see the familiar design of the Lincoln Memorial. This design, which had replaced the earlier wheat ears design in 1959, shows the famous Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., with the words E Pluribus Unum and United States of America surrounding it. Beneath the memorial, the denomination, 1 cent, is clearly displayed, but what truly makes the 1961 penny stand out is not just its design, but the circumstances of its production. As the years went by, certain examples of these pennies began to emerge with features that set them apart, like the aforementioned minting errors. Collectors who were paying attention began to realize that these weren't just ordinary pennies. They were coins with unique qualities, and their rarity would soon make them a hot commodity in the world of coin collecting. As we move closer to the present day, it's remarkable to see how the value of the 1961 penny has skyrocketed. Initially, these coins may have passed through the hands of millions without so much as a second glance, but now, they are viewed through the lens of rarity and history. For some of the rarest examples of the 1961 penny, those with particularly striking errors or unique features, the value has reached staggering heights. One such coin, a 1961 penny with an extraordinary error, fetched an incredible amount at auction, setting a new standard for what a simple penny could be worth. While most 1961 pennies remain modest in value, the special ones, with their distinct characteristics, have become prized pieces in the world of numismatics. And the 1 cent, which many of us still casually toss into a jar or forget about, can now command prices that far exceed what anyone could have imagined back in 1961. So, what's the current value of one of these rare 1961 pennies? You may be surprised to learn that, depending on the condition and specific characteristics, these pennies can now be worth up to $168,000. Yes, you heard that right. A penny, which once seemed insignificant in the grand scheme of things, can now command an amount that is mind-blowing. The next time you come across a 1961 penny, take a moment to look at it carefully. It might just be a regular 1 cent piece. Or it might be the beginning of a journey that leads you to uncover one of the most valuable coins in U.S. history. Whether it's a subtle minting error, a striking characteristic, or simply the passage of time that has made it rare, the 1961 penny holds a story that's worth telling, and it's one that could be worth a lot more than you ever expected. It's the year 1964. The world is rapidly changing, and America is at a pivotal point in its history. From the civil rights movement to the space race, the 1960s were a time of transformation, innovation, and challenges. The penny, that simple 1 cent piece that most Americans barely gave a second thought, was quietly undergoing its own transformation, though not in the way anyone might have expected. Among the millions of pennies circulating at the time, one particular version would go on to take its place in the pantheon of rare and valuable coins, forever etched in the minds of numismatists and collectors. Before we dive into the specifics of the 1964 penny, it's important to understand what was going on at the time. America was feeling the pressure of economic change. The Kennedy administration had introduced several key initiatives, such as the push for space exploration and a commitment to combating poverty, all while grappling with the challenges of a growing Cold War. The nation was in a state of transition, but so too was its currency. For much of the 20th century, the design of American coins remained relatively stable. The penny had been around for decades, and the iconic image of Abraham Lincoln had graced the obverse of the coin since 1909. Designed by Victor David Brenner, Lincoln's portrait had become an enduring symbol of the nation's reverence for its 16th president. On the reverse of the penny, the design had evolved over time, from the classic wheat ears to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959. By 1964, the penny continued to carry the image of Abraham Lincoln, with the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, but there was something new happening behind the scenes that would affect not only the design of coins, but the way they were produced. The 1964 penny had one major distinction: it was the last year the penny was minted with a composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Starting in 1965, the U.S. Mint would begin experimenting with new materials due to rising copper prices, and the familiar copper penny would slowly give way to a more cost-effective alloy. In a way, the 1964 penny marks the end of an era for the classic, all-copper coin. So, what made the 1964 penny so remarkable? It wasn't just its historical context or the end of an era for its composition. It was the fascinating intricacies of its production, and specifically, a few rare and valuable versions of this penny that would later cause a stir among collectors. One of the most intriguing aspects of the 1964 penny is the possibility of minting errors. Minting errors, for those unfamiliar, occur when a coin is struck with defects, either from misaligned dies, double strikes, or other issues that cause unusual features on the coin. These errors are what make some 1964 pennies incredibly rare and highly valuable today. For example, there were instances where the 1964 penny was struck with a double die, an error where the coin's design appears twice, offset slightly, giving the coin a blurry, layered look. These double dies, often so subtle that they're easily missed by the casual observer, are highly prized by collectors. The 1964 penny was also prone to other types of errors, such as off-center strikes and die cracks, which make certain examples of the coin even rarer. While most 1964 pennies are relatively ordinary, these rare minting errors have caused certain examples to appreciate in value over time. As collectors began to recognize the value of these error coins, they were pulled from circulation, hoarded, and sold to the highest bidder. What was once just a penny could now be worth far more due to these unique characteristics. However, it's not just the minting errors that make the 1964 penny valuable. The historical significance of the coin has also contributed to its status as a collector's item. The penny was produced during a time of great social and political change in America. The year 1964 marked the height of the Civil Rights Movement, the passing of the Civil Rights Act, and the height of President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society programs. It was a year of monumental shifts in the fabric of American society, and having a coin minted during that time adds a layer of historical resonance to its appeal. But let's focus on the design of the 1964 penny itself. On the obverse, we still see the iconic image of Abraham Lincoln, a deeply respectful and dignified portrait that has become synonymous with American history. The words, "In God We Trust," are inscribed above Lincoln's bust, while "Liberty" is featured on the left side, and the year, 1964, is inscribed at the bottom. The image of Lincoln, crafted by Brenner, still carries the weight of a nation's respect for its 16th president, and it remains an iconic design that has stood the test of time. On the reverse of the 1964 penny, we have the familiar image of the Lincoln Memorial, which had replaced the wheat ears design in 1959. The memorial is depicted in all its grandeur, with the words, "E pluribus unum," above, "United States of America," surrounding the top, and "1 cent" prominently displayed at the bottom. This reverse design evokes a sense of national pride and unity, reflecting the values of the country at the time. Now, let's talk about the penny's minting process. The 1964 penny was struck at the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The mint mark on the coin will tell you where it was struck, and for a collector, these small details matter. The coins minted in Philadelphia do not have a mint mark, while those struck in Denver are marked with a D, and those from San Francisco have an S. Collectors often pay close attention to the mint marks when searching for rarities, as these can sometimes be linked to higher quality or more desirable coins. Despite being one of the most common coins in circulation, the 1964 penny's production run, amounting to billions of coins, does not diminish its appeal for collectors. As with all collectibles, the key lies in the rarity and condition of the coin. Over the years, certain 1964 pennies have been graded at an exceptional level, meaning they've been preserved in nearly perfect condition. These mint state pennies, or those in excellent quality, command the highest prices at the marketplace. Now, you may be wondering, what is the value of a 1964 penny today? While the average 1964 penny isn't worth much more than its face value, the rarer specimens, those with minting errors, perfect condition, or special characteristics, have seen their value increase exponentially. The most highly sought-after examples of the 1964 penny have been known to sell for staggering amounts of money. Some of the most pristine and rare 1964 pennies can fetch up to $160,000. This is no ordinary penny, this is a piece of American history, a coin that represents the culmination of a period of dramatic change and the perfect storm of rarity, design, and historical significance. The next time you hold a 1964 penny, remember that it could be more than just pocket change. You could be holding onto a treasure, a coin that encapsulates a moment in time, and one that is worth far more than you ever imagined. It's 1996, and a decade of significant change and technological advancement has unfolded. The world is entering the era of the internet boom, while the United States itself is adjusting to a new era of political and social reform. The penny, that simple, everyday coin, often passed over or tucked away in jars by the millions, is part of the story of a nation that is transitioning, evolving, and reflecting its own moment in history. Little did most people know at the time, that the 1996 penny would one day capture the attention of numismatists, collectors, and investors alike, becoming a rare and valuable piece of U.S. currency. To understand why the 1996 penny has become a notable collectible, we first need to look at the context in which it was produced. The year 1996 was a turning point in many ways. The U.S. economy was thriving under the leadership of President Bill Clinton. The Cold War had ended, and the United States was stepping into a new world order with a booming economy, emerging technology, and a changing global landscape. The world was on the cusp of the digital revolution. Yet, amidst all this transformation, the U.S. Mint was quietly producing the 1-cent coin that would later captivate the numismatic world. The design of the penny, which has remained largely unchanged since 1909, carried on the tradition that had been established almost a century earlier with President Abraham Lincoln's image on the obverse. Designed by Victor David Brenner, Lincoln's portrait on the penny had become an iconic representation of the U.S. itself, a coin with not just monetary value but historical and cultural significance. The reverse of the 1996 penny still displayed the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to replace the earlier wheat ears reverse. The memorial was a fitting tribute to Lincoln, underscoring the solemnity of his legacy and his connection to the nation. The composition of the 1996 penny, however, marked a distinct difference from the pennies of the past. The 1996 penny, like many modern pennies, was primarily made of copper-plated zinc. The U.S. Mint had shifted from using nearly pure copper in the pennies of earlier years to a more cost-effective and lightweight composition. This change was a response to rising copper prices, which had begun to impact the cost of minting coins. While the 1996 penny remained a familiar sight in circulation, the metal it was made of, an alloy of copper and zinc, was part of a larger trend in coinage that would ultimately affect the penny's future. However, it wasn't just the composition of the 1996 penny that would make it notable in the years to come. Like many other coins, there were occasional issues during the minting process. These errors, while rare, often had a lasting impact on the value of the coin, especially among collectors. A simple misalignment, die crack, or double strike could turn an ordinary penny into an extraordinary find for numismatists. The 1996 penny, too, would eventually have its own share of quirks that would lead some of them to be among the most sought-after items in the coin-collecting world. What makes the 1996 penny particularly fascinating, from a collector's perspective, is the fact that there are specific examples of the coin that are exceedingly rare. For instance, some of the 1996 pennies produced at the Philadelphia Mint lacked the mint mark that is typically found on coins produced in Philadelphia. This was due to a brief error in the production process that left the mint mark off. These missing mint mark pennies are some of the most sought after of all 1996 pennies, as they were produced in far fewer numbers than their counterparts. In addition to this, another unusual and rare version of the 1996 penny exists, a proof coin struck by the U.S. Mint at its San Francisco facility. Proof coins are specially produced coins that are made with higher precision than regular circulating coins. These proof coins are often struck multiple times to create a flawless design and are intended for collectors. The 1996 proof penny, with its distinctive, mirror-like finish, is a coin that stands out not just because of its rarity but also because of its exceptional quality. The high-grade versions of these proof coins are especially valuable today, and their pristine condition, combined with their limited mintage, makes them a must-have for many collectors. Now, let's take a closer look at the design of the 1996 penny. On the obverse, we find Abraham Lincoln's portrait, facing right, as it has for decades. The words, "In God We Trust," can be found above Lincoln's bust, with "Liberty" on the left and the year, 1996, inscribed below. The obverse design is an enduring symbol of Lincoln's legacy, a design that has been revered for over a century. The 1996 penny, though it doesn't carry any drastic design changes, represents the continuing reverence for Lincoln, who is not only a figurehead in American history but also a symbol of unity and strength. On the reverse side of the 1996 penny, we see the Lincoln Memorial, which has been a part of the design since 1959. This reverse design features the grand columns of the memorial, with the inscriptions E Pluribus Unum and United States of America surrounding the coin, and 1 cent proudly displayed at the bottom. This design carries with it a sense of national pride and dignity, reminding all who look at it of the nation's reverence for its 16th president and the ideals of freedom and unity that he fought to preserve. So, why do collectors seek out the 1996 penny, and what makes some of these coins so valuable? The key lies in rarity. While most 1996 pennies are worth only a few cents, the rarer versions, the ones with the missing mint mark, the higher grade proof coins, and the coins with significant minting errors, can be worth far more. And the demand for these coins among collectors, fueled by their rarity and historical significance, drives up their value. For those in the know, the 1996 penny is more than just a coin, it's a piece of American history, a collectible, and a valuable asset. And now, let's get to the most exciting part, the value of the 1996 penny today. While a regular 1996 penny in circulation is worth just 1 cent, certain rare versions of the coin can fetch a remarkable price on the market. A 1996 penny without a mint mark, for instance, can command tens of thousands of dollars, as it is one of the rarest of the regular issue 1996 pennies. But it's the proof coins, the ones in flawless condition, that have truly skyrocketed in value. Some of these rare 1996 pennies have been known to sell for as much as $140,000, an astounding price for a coin that, at first glance, seems so modest that it's hard to believe that something as small and seemingly insignificant as a penny could be worth such a sum. But in the world of coin collecting, it's all about rarity, condition, and historical significance. The 1996 penny, particularly the rarer varieties, is a coin that represents not just the value of money, but the value of preserving history, of uncovering hidden treasures, and of appreciating the small things that sometimes go unnoticed. So, the next time you come across a 1996 penny, take a closer look. It might just be the key to unlocking a piece of American history and a rare collectible that could be worth far more than you ever imagined.